All right. Hello, everyone. This is Brandon Rogers, and we got today with us Alecia Barnette from Financial Independence Group. This is a group that we use heavily just to kind of give us some guidance and look at some different areas that we're looking for clients, questions that they ask us. Today's event, we're really talking about Alzheimer's type planning and long-term care. Obviously, it's a big deal. Everybody's impacted in it in some way, shape, or form. So today we're just going to take that topic, go through some questions. Got a short presentation here that Alecia will kind of give us some insight on, and we'll just kind of get into it. And again, ask any questions any down the road, or when you get a chance to watch it. We really want to have this a resource for everyone. So Alecia Barnette, I'll let you take it from here.
Thank you so much. So excited to be here. I have a passion for long-term care and care planning. So it's nice to be able to talk about it and educate people. So with that being said, thank you again. Before we get started though, one of the things to think about when hearing long-term care is how many of you have actually gone through a long-term care event with a loved one? Think about that experience. What was it like? Were you actually providing the care, or were you coordinating the care? And what was that like? Was it rewarding? Was it difficult? Did they have a plan in place, or was it just reactively dealing with it? Today we're going to talk about long-term care, but we're going to talk about it a little differently. I hope that you leave here with a better understanding of what it is and what are the options of paying for this, and how we might be able to essentially add more efficiencies to the plan that you have in place. That being said, there are 4 major myths of long-term care that I want to discuss. The first myth is it won't happen to me. Most people don't think they're going to need some type of long-term care. They tend to downplay their personal risk and often assume that others face a greater risk of needing care. The reality is the actual risk is much higher for everyone, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in a few minutes. The second myth is many people think the government is going to pay for care. So Medicare is only covering up to 100 days of skilled care, and there are really stipulations that go along with this. You have to be admitted into a hospital for at least 3 days. You also have to show signs of getting better. So most people think you just go into the hospital for 3 days, it's going to pay for 100 days of care. That's not necessarily true. There are stipulations that Medicare will require in order to pay for those 100 days. Also, the last thing that most people want to do is spend down their assets to be placed into a Medicaid facility. So it's great for people that need it, but certainly people don't want to volunteer to spend down those assets, especially when they have future financial goals. And again, spending down those assets could really take a toll on your financial planning. So let's talk about the third myth. So that's what my savings are for. So how many people actually understand the cost of care? What you can do is on your own time, you can type in www.longtermcare.gov, and it will actually show you the local cost of care in your area. It's a government website where they give you lots of information about long-term care. And I'll check it out and show you, check it out for you and show you in just a minute what that looks like. But it will redirect you to the Genworth cost of care site. So what most people don't understand is that by default, their money is their plan. So think about this. If you were to need care, which asset would you liquidate first? All right, so let's move on. So here's an example of the average cost of care. So if you, again, go to longtermcare.gov, it redirects you back to the Genworth Cost of Care survey. This is an example of the cost of care in the Charlotte area. So now you can see that home care is roughly around $4,000 a month. Adult daycare is around $1,300. Assisted living is around $4,500. And then a private room is around $7,817 a month. Typically what you're going to see is nursing home cost is about 50% more than home care and assisted living. Now think about this. You may not need care tomorrow, so what's that going to look like in 20, 30 years? So the nice thing about this website is it actually shows you the future cost of care. So here in this example, it's 20 years out. So in 2039, we're looking at those costs of our $75, $77 a month for home care. For assisted living, we're looking at $82.77, and then around $14,000 a month for nursing home. So again, most people don't realize the true cost of care. So make sure you check that out on your own time. It's a great resource.
And Alecia, real quick on that, I know a lot of people obviously you're asking questions about this, and everybody thinks about long-term care facilities, but I mean, usually when we try to set something up, a lot of people want to stay at home, right? And
Absolutely.
that's definitely an option that we try to look at from that end. But cost-wise, also too, right? And these are certainly average costs, and they're definitely in line, of course. But when you're looking at, it depends on what facility you really stay at. How much care do you need somebody coming in, just at mealtime, or do you need it just throughout the day? Do you need 24/7 care? So you can have all those different options, obviously, within these plans. But it just depends on what you need, and the cost obviously varies from it. So I mean, you can go from like your $4,000 to 12,000, I guess, a month, just depending on what you need, right?
Absolutely. And these, again, are average cost of care. So, for example, you can have above average nursing homes. So, is this going to cover, all the risk? No, this is the average risk. So, well, like you said, around the clock care can cost around $12,000 a month. So, keep that in mind when thinking about those future care costs. What do you want? Do you want to receive care in the home? Or are you okay with going into a facility? You need to take all of those things into consideration.
Yeah.
All right. So the last myth, and I hear this all the time. My family will take care of me. And I know this sounds funny, but do they know this? I mean, really, do they know this? What does that look like? Long-term care events happen to the whole family, not just one person. So ensure that you and your loved ones are on the same page and have plans in place before they need care. The facts are that 61% of sons and 51% of daughters surveyed hope they don't become their parents' caregivers. 68% of Americans surveyed agree that their children should not be burdened by having to actually provide the care. Here's another reality. Caregiving negatively impacts women in the family. Those caring for ill parents are twice as likely to experience depression or anxiety, and cost is nearly $325,000 due to lost wages and diminishing work hours. I can tell you firsthand, I've had to go, my dad passed away in April, and I've had to go take care of my mother, and I can't tell you how many, and I love my mother, so of course I'm going to do it, but definitely just having to go take care of her, there are lost wages. I've had to take time off of work, so keep that in mind as well. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes. Today, we're going to actually talk about long-term care in a different way. We're going to talk about the great income gap. So, what's the goal when climbing a mountain? Most people would say to get to the top, right? Actually, it's to get down the mountain without breaking your neck. Now, let's take a look at baby boomers. Most baby boomers have gone through the accumulation phase, they are starting to retire, and now they're entering what we call the distribution phase. That's going back down the mountain. So what would cause issues if during the distribution phase that could cause us not to have enough income? Maybe having enough retirement income, interest rate, low interest rate, we're definitely in that today. You've got healthcare costs, and most importantly, income to pay for healthcare, more specifically, long-term care. So in your retirement years, again, what would be the reason for your income needs to suddenly skyrocket? So what would cause that to happen? Again, most would say a health issue. Where would you get, for example, an additional $70,000 per year? So how would we fill that gap? So most people, if they were to have some type of care need, they're going to liquidate their conservative assets first. So we're talking things like managed accounts, annuities, cash or cash equivalent. Long-term care is certainly an income issue, not an asset issue. So think about this. Is that going to affect your retirement income plan? Will your assets last? So here's a diagram of what we like to call the great income gap. So this is an example of a 65-year-old. So let's say they're retired and they're making approximately $100,000 a year. They're living comfortably. Well, let's say at age 75, they have some sort of health issues. Most people can probably absorb some of the cost, but then again, let's say at age 85, they were diagnosed with Alzheimer's. Where are they going to get the additional money to pay for the care? And then at age 90, between ages 85 and 90, that's what we call the great income gap. Where are we going to get the money to fill that gap? So let's take a look at some of the problems. An estimated 5.8 million Americans have Alzheimer's diagnosed in 2020. 80% of those people are age 75 or plus. 1 out of 10 people, this is crazy, over age 65 has Alzheimer's. And almost 2/3 of Americans with Alzheimer's are women. Older African Americans are twice as likely to have Alzheimer's, and Hispanics are about 1.5 times as likely. Check this out too. 13.8 million people over the age of 65 are projected to have Alzheimer's or dementia by 2050. So 2050. So people age 65 or older survive an average of 4 to 8 years. After a diagnosis of Alzheimer's, some may live as long as 20 years. So that's really the uncertainty, and that's the problem. Are you going to be able to cover the longevity risk? Some can probably absorb, like in the diagram, the short-term risk, but it's the long-term risk that we're worried about here.
Another personal note on there, Alecia, you mentioned your issues that you're dealing with your family. On my end, again, everybody's got these type of stories. I see my wife's grandfather. He was a World War II Korean War veteran, and he was diagnosed with dementia. And they're fortunate enough that he was able to go to the VA hospital for that. Building 42 here in Salisbury, fantastic facility, great people there. But he was able to get free care at that point because he was in action. But he was in there for about 10, 11 years, I believe, is actually how long he was there with dementia. So I mean, it's real for sure. And again, we just gotta make sure we got some type of plan in place, because obviously it can't happen.
Absolutely. And actually, the average Alzheimer's case is about 8.2 years.
Yeah,
So that can definitely be a huge impact, not only on your finances, but on your family who's having to take care of you.
yeah.
All right, so let's take a look at, many have heard the statistics. 70% of people over the age of 65 need care at some point in their future. 1 in 5 will actually require at least 5 years or more. Here's the biggest problem. Most people believe they're in the 30%. They believe it never will happen to them, and since they don't need care, they're not going to put a plan in place. What we do know is that most men and women make decisions to have a plan to protect the people that they love, the people that are truly affected when care is needed. Those are the consequences to not properly planning. Your spouse may feel obligated to take care of you, or perhaps maybe your financial situation will dictate it. The stress and responsibility of being a primary caregiver can often also make the caregiver as well. When a spouse isn't involved, other loved ones carry the burden. When you need care, your life doesn't end, someone else's may. Often, the eldest daughter will quit her job, maybe move in with mom or dad, or maybe they'll move into her home. They may give up their career, as any decent child would feel obligated to do. All right, so let's take a look at some of the ways that we can mitigate the risk. There's a couple different types of long-term care. There's traditional long-term care, and there's asset-based long-term care. Most people have heard of traditional long-term care. I like to use the analogy owning your contract versus renting it. Traditional long-term care is like renting your policy. It's probably the cheapest way to buy the most amount of long-term care. However, rates can go up. If you don't use it, you lose it, and there's no exit strategy. Asset-based long-term care policies have a benefit whether you live, whether you die, or whether you quit. And there's several different ways that you can fund an asset-based long-term care plan. You can use highly appreciated non-qualified annuities, cash or cash equivalent, qualified dollars, which a lot of people have a disproportionate amount of funds in qualified money. It's a good way to fund it. And then last but not least, income, which is real comparable to paying for traditional long-term care. That's the only way you can fund traditional. But again, I like to use the analogy owning it versus renting it. The best plan that you can have in place when you need it is the policy that's in force. So either one is a great plan. It's just that there are different options to take a look at and be aware of. So let's take a look at some examples using asset-based long-term care. We have a male age 60 and a female age 60. They have CD money. So in this example, we have $150,000 sitting in the bank in a CD. They've done a great job with income. They've done a great job preparing for retirement, except for long-term care protection. So they're not concerned with needing care for the average day because they've accumulated some assets. They can probably afford some of the short-term risks. The main concern is if one or both of them had a long-term care need, like, for example, because of Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, or dementia. They understand that lifetime benefits is an option that will cover the longevity risk. So here in this example, we have $150,000 again. We're moving into this product. It's going to provide each person $68,000 per year tax-free lifetime income stream specifically for long-term care. If they both needed care, we're talking $136,000 for both lifetime benefits tax-free for care. If they don't use it, they don't lose it, we've got a $189,000 death benefit. If they change their mind, there's some cash accumulation that they can walk away with. If we invested in this example $150,000, it would take approximately a 45% guaranteed, 45% return on their investment to guarantee that $68,000 per year for life. If they both needed care, it would take around 90% return on their investment to generate $136,000. So it would be very difficult to do this. It's a better use of their money, a better way to self-insure, and again, they're owning their contract versus renting it. So this couple understood they wouldn't be able to earn, again, enough interest to equal this type of income that this policy provides for LTC purposes. The cash value and death benefit was secondary, but again, they liked the idea of if they didn't use it, their family would receive some type of benefit. So it's a great option as a CD alternative. Let's take a look at our next example, qualified dollars. So here we're looking at a male age 70 and a female age 71. So this married couple is retired. They're living a comfortable lifestyle. She has just begun taking required minimum distributions, and he will start to take those soon as well. They don't need their RMDs. Many people don't need their RMDs, but unfortunately, government's going to make us take those at some point in time. They also don't have long-term care in place because they didn't want to deal with an expensive policy where the premium increases every year, or maybe if they don't use it, they lose it. They're now interested because they have they've seen a family and friends experience. They like the idea of passing a benefit to their grandchildren if it's not used. So here we have an example of a $200,000 IRA transfer that's going to provide $24,000 out of that IRA to be distributed to satisfy RMDs. So that is a taxable distribution. We're never going to get out of paying Uncle Sam. However, we're spreading that tax liability out over 10 years. That's going to provide them both $51,000 per year, a lifetime income stream specifically for care. If both need it, $102,000 per year. Both, again, lifetime benefit income stream specifically for long-term care. All of it is going to be tax-free. If they die and never use it, there's a $212,000 death benefit. Again, live and need long-term care, they have a benefit. Die and don't need long-term care, someone's going to get at least their premium back. If they want to quit, there's some accumulation value. Investing $200,000, it would take 25% return on their money to get $51,000 lifetime benefit for one. If they invested $200,000, it would take a 50% return on their investment to equal $102,000 for both. So again, they understand they probably can't earn this on their own, and this is a great way to satisfy RMDs. Their premium, we worked backwards on the total RMDs, which was approximately that $24,000 a year. So they now understand the cost and can supplement using their pension, Social Security, and this policy. So again, a great.
One thing I was going to say about that, Alecia, is that the RMD strategy certainly is a good strategy, and because, like I say, some people don't need it, don't need their RMD, and hate taking it out. But this is definitely one way. Just for the Secure Act purposes, at the end of 2019, it did change now. So instead of 70.5 for the RMD, we're at age 72. So can't put that strategy until 72, but still definitely a viable strategy.
Absolutely. And you can use this policy for anyone over 59.5. So you can start your RMDs early. Certainly while taxes are on sale, if you ask me, they're definitely on sale right now and could go up. So you can start them early and then again, spread that tax liability out over 10 years. So great way to use RMDs to backstop against the long-term care risk. Express to those loved ones your desire for care and discuss the care if necessary. Next, you want to meet with your advisor to set that plan in motion. Tell your loved ones what that plan is, so that they can follow your wishes. Whatever you decide, don't delay, because you'll never be younger and healthier than you are now. Again, you've got options, and that's the great news.
Yeah, just a couple points that I wanted to point out as well is, notice in all those examples that you talked about, I mean, the consideration there of that someone gets the benefit, right? It's not like your home or car insurance versus like the traditional long-term care policies that you're putting some money back, and if you don't have a long-term care event, then it's just, oh, well, you were covered. But, in these scenarios nowadays, when you're looking at trying to close this gap, you want to make sure somebody gets that benefit. Either you're using it for your care, you're transitioning, taxable assets to tax-free assets. As far as the death benefits concerned, as Alecia mentioned, I mean, tax rates are on sale at this point in time, but that's obviously can be evaluated. So that's a big deal as well. And then lastly, you had talked about at the beginning about people giving the care, and that's a lot we see on our end is that, it's not so much the person that needs the care that is the one that person's being taken care of, right?
That's
because
right.
Maybe that other spouse or the family member step in and do it, but we've definitely seen wearing people out, obviously, from that, the financial stress, the emotional stress, and just the physical stress of helping out in this scenario. So it's really important to have some type of plan in place for sure.
Absolutely, and I always say it's long-term care doesn't bring families together; it tears them apart. So having a plan in place will certainly help mitigate the risk, the familial risk that is associated with needing care. Let your family supervise the care rather than provide the care. So it's a great alternative.
Definitely a good way to put it. Well, thanks, Alecia, for joining us today and giving this update again. We want to continue to give these educational events to our clients and anyone who is interested in it, because again, this is really good info. Again, if there's anybody out there that wants to hear something specific and a specific topic that we haven't covered, definitely let us know. We'll put that together for you. But again, everybody, thanks for joining us today. And again, thank you again to Alecia. And certainly reach out with any questions. And we look forward to seeing everybody soon.
Thank you so much. Great to be here.